Hi, welcome to Paradise Love and Veggies. I'm Samantha James. No, I am not playing in a fort. I'm actually underneath my table in the shop where I am going to put some cardboard around so that I can take care of any cold air that might get trapped under here. Because this week I have been working on a warming bed for my little seedling trays, and I'm super excited to tell you about it. Having the right temperature to grow seeds makes all the difference in the world. As you know, normally I use my greenhouse, but it's really hard for me to get electricity to it. So I decided to do something a little different this year and actually grow the seedlings in my shop where I'll be able to attach some lights and have the warming table.
I started the project by visiting my local hardware store and purchased a sheet of Armax. It's a thermal sheath. So the type that I bought was an inch and a half thick, and I figured that would be fine for what I was trying to do. Armax is really easy to cut, and as you can see, I'm using a pocket knife, which was really horribly dull, and I should have done better. Anyways, it worked just fine. Once I scored it on the top side, I flipped it over and very carefully cracked it so that I could just make another little cut to cut through the aluminum coating on top. Part of the hardest part was honestly working with this 4x4 sheet in my shop because there is not much extra space in there. And that proved to be quite a challenge, but I finally managed to get it flipped the right way and be able to, as you can see here, there you go, crack it, and then you just kind of take your knife and slide through. Just be careful not to crunch up the paper because you want the paper to get cut, not actually ripped off of there. I had it in my mind that for some reason to score the edges and flip them up to make a tray, I was going to have to cut out the corners. And after I did that all the way around, I flipped the Armax back over so that I would be scoring the underneath side and not the top side where I wanted my tray. I started to cut a straight line from corner to corner. I wanted to be really careful that I was only going through part of it because I was going to end up bending this up and I wanted to save that other part of foil. I decided that actually freehanding the space was probably a really poor idea, so I got a measuring stick, which proved to be invaluable with this project. Measuring sticks are great. You can pick one up at the hardware store, and if you don't have one, I strongly recommend you invest the couple dollars to purchase one. Speaking of the right tool for the job, I definitely should have been using a different knife, but honestly, I was kind of in the work mode and I didn't want to leave the shop to go try to find something better. I went along the edge and scored all four sides equal so that when I bent them up, there would be a nice little area that I could use as a tray to hold the sand. It went pretty quickly, it took me about an hour. Once I got all the sides scored, I very carefully cracked them. I wanted to be really careful to save that solid piece on the other side so that it was continuous and I didn't have any places for the water to get stuck inside of my foam. I was feeling pretty good about what I had done so far until I actually started bending up the corners and realizing that I should have done a different job cutting because now I had a missing corner and that really wasn't going to work. I thought maybe just taping, but no, I had to pull the pieces out of the trash so I could add back that void area. I had to cut them down just a little bit because I didn't know which corner was what, but that's okay. What I chose to use for this project was some aluminum heat tape. It's not actually heat tape, but it's for when people install furnaces for the ductwork. It worked really well. Honestly, the hardest part was actually peeling it away from the paper. And after I got about an hour into the project, I realized that starting from the middle worked a lot better than trying to peel the edge away. Ever since I was a little girl, I loved tape projects, so this was right up my alley. I used a ton of this tape. I really wanted to make sure that the sides were secure because I knew that the weight of the sand would push them if they didn't. This tape worked out really well. It was super sticky, and the areas where I had to stick it directly onto the foam, it worked just fine. In addition to wanting to make it strong enough so it would hold the sand, I also didn't want the sand leaking out all over my shop. So I was really careful to reinforce where I needed to so that there was no little holes or little cracks places where the sand could get through. Once I had my shape taped together, I turned the board over and started taping the underside. Again, I really didn't want any sand leaking, and I knew it'd be really important to have this super strong because of all the sand that was going to be going into it. I would say each side probably took me, maybe 15 to 20 minutes each to tape, so it did take some time, but well worth the effort. Once I had finished taping the heck out of the bottom, I flipped it back over and finished taping up the top. I didn't want any of the foam exposed because I wasn't sure what the water would do to that, and I just wanted to have a finished look on the top side so it looked pretty for my little seedlings. Now it was time to get my electric soil heating cable ready. This company is called Grow Quick, and I've been given this cable a long time ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, and I've just never used it because I could never really figure out how to use it correctly. It's really important when you're using this cable that it doesn't cross over each other at any point. And as you can see, it took some time for me to actually figure out the layout of this cable. It took so much longer than I could have ever anticipated. I probably spent 45 minutes trying to get it laid out correctly so that there was the correct space between the wires. The wire was very rascally, and if it wasn't for the clothespins, I certainly couldn't have been able to lay it out the way that I did. I mean, even having the clothespins, it really took a long time to figure out where I was going to put the wire and make it even. It was actually driving me a little bit bonkers, but I finally got it done. Once I got the layout correct, I went ahead and replaced all the clothespins with the little bit of wire that I just twisted the heat cable onto the wire mesh below it. Attaching the heating cable to the wire took a little bit longer than I thought. And all in all, I probably spent about an hour, but I really wanted to make sure that it was attached correctly and secure because I didn't want the wire raising up. As I mentioned earlier, I used cardboard around the base so that there wasn't airflow under. And I also used an old tablecloth to cover my table before I got this project started. I ended up using 3 bags of sand, or 150 pounds.
Well, I'm just putting the finishing touches on my seating table project I've been working on all week, and just about to hang up another light fixture, and then we're going to plug it in and hopefully see if it works.
Originally, I hadn't planned on using lights. I was just going to rely on the heating table itself to warm the little seedlings. But Farmer Nikki said I really ought to use the lights, and she was sweet enough to gift these to me, so I have no excuse for not making it the best I can.
Yikes. Who knew that that was going to happen with the video camera with the fluorescent lights? But at least they work. So I'm going to see if this table gets warm here. Let this heat cable heat up for a little bit, and call it done. And tomorrow I'm going to plant some seeds, so I'm super excited. Before we wrap up the show today, I wanted to take you around the garden and show you what I've been working on besides the seeding that I've been doing this week. This is the first year that I've planted freesias, and they are just doing really, really lovely. I love the smell of this flower. It's just reminds me of Hawaii. Just such a beautiful smell. These poor guys over here really got eaten up by the slugs. You can see here just the devastation that slugs can do. But my new slug repellent is working really, really well, so hopefully those guys are going to bounce back. This area I lovingly refer to as my patio, or the lower patio, always gets lots of weeds in it. So I'm pretty excited about putting these little chicks and hens down here in the crack. And I'm so thrilled that finally, hopefully, that's going to take care of my weeding problem. The bench is turned over from the wind, and I just haven't righted it yet because we're still getting some pretty strong winds this time of year. The little daffodils are doing really well. And I've got these little Shasta daisy starts here. They're starting to come up. Shoots. Their starts and their shoots. Nothing happening in the potato area yet, but I expect to see something any day. I wanted to show you, this is the kale and Swiss chard area that I redid a couple of weeks ago with the washed dairy manure, and you can just see how much growth has happened and how well everything is doing. That's really, really exciting to see when your plants perk up. There's the Swiss chard. Yum. I've also got some calendula in here. If you notice that didn't look like Swiss chard, it's because it's not. This area here I got planted this week with some onions and some beets, so that'll be exciting. And this is my raised bed area, which is not actually going to be a raised bed after all, but I planted some snap peas here. I'm going to use every other spacing, and then I've got nasturtiums growing here. So that'll be really beautiful when they start to grow up. Yeah, so I was going to fill this all with soil, but the expense of getting 12 yards down here, I just figured I probably better not spend that kind of money. So I'm going to end up weeding this area and using it as another flower bed. And I really want to caution viewers that if you get straw, to make sure that the straw doesn't have seeds. This is just the worst. This is what happens when your straw ends up growing, and it's going to be quite a big pain in the butt to get this whole area weeded. But that's okay. That's part of a gardener's plight, is weeding and weeding and more weeding. This area here, I got some garlics transplanted in, so that's kind of cool. And you can see also here that my collard greens are looking really, really well. I'm really excited about how much they perked up just from that washed dairy manure. I've still got to work on this area over here. That'll all get planted out. Okay, well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching Paradise Lovin' Veggies. I'm Samantha James, and we'll see you next time.